Hello folks, my name is Mark, this is Why Hate the World, how you guys doing? And the pandemic is almost over with, at least in the United States. I'm very happy about that, I hope you are too. Of course this means that with my usual punctual self, always on topic, that means I have to make a video about the pandemic. Anyway, so I wanted to start with this idea that people have been calling it a hoax for the last, year and a half, which you would think that 598,000 people dead would have, convinced even the most, stubborn skeptic that COVID-19 is actually real, but there's still people out there to this day that still post this shit on Twitter, right, on Facebook or whatever. This kind of started with something that Donald Trump said, and this was back in February 28th of 2020 in a rally in South Carolina. Here's the quote from Donald Trump, right? One of my people came up to me and said, "Mr. President, they tried to beat you on Russia, Russia, Russia. That didn't work out too well. They couldn't do it. They tried the impeachment hoax. That was not a perfect conversation. They tried anything. They tried it over and over. They've been doing it since you got in. It's all turning. They lost. It's all turning. Think of it. Think of it. And this is their new hoax." Sounds just so... I mean, when you say it out loud like that, when you actually read, something that Donald Trump said back, it's like, oh my God, it's so fucking embarrassing. Anyway, that was the quote from Donald Trump where he first called it a hoax, right? Of course, he wasn't actually referring to the disease itself. He was referring to the Democrats' reaction to his handling of the pandemic as the new hoax, right? Like, basically, he was criticizing their criticism of him, calling it a hoax because he's an idiot. But people picked it up, and his followers are too fucking stupid to understand that, and so you started seeing all these like MAGA morons on Twitter and on Facebook and all that stuff calling it a hoax, calling it a Democratic hoax, and it's not real, blah blah blah. It's nothing to be afraid of, right? And that in one form or another has kind of persisted with us all the way through the entire thing, and it's sort of peppered the conservative response to the pandemic. So this kind of leads into the lethality of it. Another thing that you would see from conservatives is that it was basically just the same thing as the flu. It had a 98% chance survival rate, which doesn't sound like it's so bad, right? It's like, oh, well, if I'm not afraid to get it, 98% of the people that get it live. It's like, yeah, well, still 598,000 people died of this, right? So it's like, obviously it's not a flu. In real life, COVID-19 is far more communicable than your average flu is, kills far more people. A 2% death rate is massive, compared to a normal flu, right? And you got to keep in mind also that 598,000 dead people, that's a conservative estimate. And in real life, the real numbers are probably much higher than that, because that's not counting people that, never got tested. That's not counting people who died at home and weren't counted on the official tallies. And we also know a lot of states like Florida, for example, were understating their death numbers, right? Understating their case numbers and their death numbers because they didn't want like Donald Trump to look bad. It's probably way more than the official count. We will probably never know how many people in this country actually died from this disease. So, but still, that didn't stop the Republicans from saying it was all a hoax, right? And then if you get it, you'll survive it. This led to some other ridiculous shit. Of course, we got some stupid things about UV lights and hydroxychloroquine. You remember that? Remember when the president of the United States said that you should inject, fishbowl cleaner in order to kill this virus, and then some of his fucking people actually went out and did it. Some of his followers actually went out and bought fishbowl cleaner and started drinking that shit. Can you? We're living in the worst timeline. I mean, Jesus Christ. Some other things. This attitude that it is not as lethal as everybody says, has led directly into the anti-masker movement. So now you have millions upon millions of people out there who refuse to wear masks and refuse to wash their hands, and refuse to take basic precautions, stuff like that, you know. And I understand it, right? I understand that wearing a mask sucks, right? Nobody likes wearing masks because, your face gets all sweaty and it's gross and blah, 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 and it's uncomfortable, right? But they work, okay? They work. So here's the thing about this, right, is that early in the pandemic, when it started, Dr. Fauci, right, head of the CDC, said in an interview on 60 Minutes that you shouldn't wear a mask, right? This was in March of 2020. Well, by April of 2020, the CDC was saying wear a mask, okay? And it was because when he said that, it wasn't so sure that it was necessary, right? Because, that was very early in the pandemic and nobody knew how lethal it was. Nobody knew how communicable it actually was. And by April 3rd, the CDC was saying wear a mask, right? So it's like, they got their numbers in for those couple of weeks and they realized, wearing a mask actually works. And they changed their minds. Of course, people have taken that original comment that he said, more than a year ago, and they're still repeating that shit today, saying, see, look, even Fauci says don't wear a mask. It's bullshit. It's absolutely fucking bullshit, right? Some other stupid things about Dr. Fauci that people have been saying about Dr. Fauci. One of them was that his name appears on 4 U.S. patents for a key glycoprotein used to create the current COVID-19 epidemic. That's complete bullshit. That's false. I'll put a link down to the thing in that. There's no truth in that. Another one is that he is responsible for millions of people dying during the early days of HIV/AIDS, right? That's very misleading because although back then, well, first off, I don't see how that relates to anything that has to do with the coronavirus, number one. Number two, that in itself isn't really that true because even though way back in the beginning of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, he was, kind of a bureaucrat, right? He eventually did respond to activists. So he actually opened up the rules when it came to HIV drug trials, right? And allowed far number of people who were desperate for anything to try experimental drugs and stuff like that. And that actually helped get a lot of HIV treatment drugs, passed through the Food and Drug Administration, got them approved way faster than they would have, right? So Fauci actually, worked with activists there and became one of their strongest allies. So it's very misleading to say that he was responsible for the deaths of millions upon millions of people. That's kind of bullshit. And he's also responsible for the saving millions upon millions of lives. So one little bit of misinformation you're seeing out there a lot now is this idea that the COVID-19 was actually a Chinese bioweapon, right? And this was something that was floated really early in the pandemic by Trump supporters, calling it the China hoax, that kind of thing, mainly as a way of trying to shift blame away from the Trump administration for their horrible handling of it. And the rationale goes like this. Well, it's not Donald Trump's fault that this is killing so many people. It's actually a bioweapon from China, and it's really China's fault. And this is actually something we have internal memos from the Trump campaign, in 2020, that they were going to use this in order to deflect, right? And get, in order to deflect from his incredibly horrible handling of the pandemic and try to get him elected. So we know that this was a strategy that the Trump campaign was using, right? So that's total bullshit. But this has kind of come up again recently because there was a recent New York Times article that got, published, and then also some emails from Dr. Fauci that got leaked. And, basically said that there was, because what it is there actually is a lab that studies coronavirus, bat viruses, right, in Wuhan. And 3 of the scientists that work there, right at the beginning, right before COVID-19 dropped in December of last year of, 2019, 3 of them got sick with, presumably the coronavirus, which the thing is, here's the thing about that, right? First off, we don't know if they got sick with the coronavirus. That's the first thing, right? Because that was flu season. so they could have just got the flu, right? Secondly, there is no actual proof that this virus escaped from a lab in any way, right? They have the viruses that they work on in that lab there, and the coronavirus is not one of them. Okay, of course that could be covered up, right? Okay, whatever. Third, the scientists that have looked at COVID-19 have concluded that it was not altered in a lab. The science, the proof is not there. Okay, in the actual genome of the virus or whatever the fuck it is, right? And I'm not going to get too much into this, but, there's lots of videos out there that could explain it 10 times better than I ever could. There's one by Rebecca Watson that she put out the other day, which is, much more better at explaining, in layman's terms, why this virus is not, has not been altered in a lab. So I recommend checking that one out. The thing about it is that you got to remember is that the science doesn't fucking matter, okay? None of the Trump people, none of the conservatives out there, the MAGA people, the people wearing those stupid fucking red hats, none of them actually give a shit about the fucking science, all right? They don't care about the science, all right? They can't comprehend the science. They don't give a shit about that, okay? They were using it as a way to deflect criticism away from Donald Trump, and that's where it came from. That's where it really came from, okay? This idea that it was all a hoax from China and that it's a bioweapon, which I don't understand, first off, how that makes any sense. Why does it make sense that if it's a bioweapon that came out of a lab in China, how does that excuse Donald Trump's incredibly, incompetent handling of the pandemic? How does that make up for that? It's still, but that's what it was, okay? That's what they used it for, in order to deflect and defend Donald Trump from criticism. Okay, this leads us to the vaccine, which, that's the big, we're kind of in the final phase of this all now, right? And now we have all these anti-vaxxers, right? And it's something like a ridiculous number of Republicans will not get this vaccine, more than half. I can't remember exactly what the number is, but it's a shitload, right? Which is fucking stupid as fuck. And you're starting to see lots of conspiracy theories getting pushed around about this vaccine, like number one, that it has a chip inside of it, right? That Bill Gates is using this vaccine as a vector in order to inject microchips inside of people, right? And you're seeing there's people putting videos out on TikTok, stuff like that, where they're taking like magnets and stuff and putting them on their arms and the magnet sticks, or a guy takes a spoon and he puts it on his forehead, blah blah blah, and it sticks on his forehead, that kind of shit, right? And this kind of grew out of a very early conspiracy theory for COVID-19 back when it started, where people were saying that 5G cell towers were causing the actual symptoms, and it wasn't a virus, it was transmissions from the 5G cell towers. And it's funny how this shit evolves, because now what that has evolved to is that now if you get the vaccine, the 5G cell towers are transmitting signals to the microchip that was injected inside of you to supposedly, I guess, I don't know, control you and, I guess make you buy Microsoft products or some shit. Right? I don't know. It doesn't make sense, obviously. I mean, another thing, as far as the vaccine goes, this idea that it changes your DNA, that it turns you into some kind of hybrid creature, right? This comes from a misunderstanding of what the vaccine actually is, because the vaccine does not alter your DNA, obviously. What it is that it has mRNA proteins. So it uses those proteins in order to stimulate an immune response, right? And they break down in your body, after a couple of days, okay? So it's not going through all of your cells, changing your DNA, turning you into a human lizard hybrid or some stupid shit like that, right? It's not the mark of the fucking beast. That's another thing that people are saying. It's like, oh, they inject the microchip into you, and then it goes into your forehead, and that's the mark of the beast or whatever. It's not the mark of the beast. It's not turning people into fucking hybrids. And the other stupidest fucking thing that I've seen so far is this idea that the vaccine is shedding. Okay, so supposedly what that is that the vaccine is communicable, and the vaccine itself alters your DNA, and then you can spread it. Supposedly, I guess, through viruses inside of your, saliva and shit like that, you can spread it to other people. So you're actually seeing some fucking people out there, some of these like anti-mask people, anti-vax people, who are starting to put on masks in order to protect themselves from the shedding vaccine people, which is the dumbest fucking thing. It's like my hand is just shooting up to like facepalm myself in the face. Like I have to like stop it. Like, no, stop. I'm gonna break my nose. That's so fucking stupid. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. But you know what? Maybe that'll get people to wear fucking masks. Right? Maybe it's like maybe some of those anti-maskers now will start wearing masks if they think that they're gonna get sick from other people who have gotten a vaccine. So I just want to end with all this, this pandemic was horrible and not a good time for any of us, right? And I think it kind of goes to show, how misinformation like this has an actual human cost, right? 598,000 people have died from that just in this country by itself, and it's on its way down now, like elsewhere in the world, it's still running hard, India, Russia, South America, Brazil, right? It's still running hard. Thousands of people are still dying every single day of this, so it's not over, right? And the thing is that misinformation like this, stupid things that these people spread around like this, is what's making it last so goddamn long. It would have been over months ago if everybody would have just gotten the fuck, if everybody would have just like wore a stupid mask, socially distanced, not gone into big gatherings, not gone to fucking movie theaters or churches or concerts, any shit like that, right? If people just would have like followed basic precautions like this, right? Many of those people who are dead would still be alive. And so this is why this shit's important. This is why it's important when people say stupid things like this, that you have to counter it, And I think it's like your moral, I think it's everybody's moral duty to, like, when you see somebody spreading in misinformation, is to push back extremely hard and loud and use every weapon in the book, use name calling, use shame, right? Use, ridicule, right? Shout them down if you have to. Okay, seriously, because, someone might read that shit and actually take up that stupid advice and decide that it's like, oh, well, I don't need to wear a mask or whatever, or I don't need to get a vaccine, or something like that, or, or I might be afraid, if I don't want to get the vaccine, it's going to turn me into some kind of fucking mutant hybrid or whatever. Someone's going to take that stupid fucking advice and then, not take basic precautions, not get vaccinated, not wear a mask, and they're going to catch COVID-19 and they're going to die. Right? That's what happens. This, especially in this case, the misinformation in this case leads to actual human deaths. And this is why it's important for us to fight back. This is why it's important to be aware of this kind of thing. And I just want to say one more thing, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Like we deal with misinformation from conservatives, especially a lot in this country, about a lot of things all the time in this country. Everything from, global warming, global climate change, to environmentalism, and to abortion, to windmills causing cancer, right? We deal with this shit all the time, right? And every one of those subjects, the misinformation in every one of those subjects leads directly to lowering the quality of life for people out there, and the reason why it's done is so that conservatives can, basically make money, so that they can scare their base into donating and to buying books and to donating to political campaigns, right? And watching fucking late night cable, like TV shows, people like Sean Hannity, shit like that. This is why they do this. They use fear in order to make money, and the result of this people's fear is people die. Right? Is the deaths of people who, aren't smart enough to figure out that it's all bullshit. So anyway, that's why I think this shit's important. And hopefully, this country will learn its lesson the next time we have a pandemic. Who fucking knows, folks? Anyway, I'm just happy to finally, have this stuff be over with, right? If you haven't gotten vaccinated already, please go get vaccinated, and we'll all get through this together. It's almost over, folks. Just gotta hang in there. That's all I got. Adios.